Welcome back to Coffee Corner Motorsport, Full Beans the podcast. We are back after, it was kind of an enforced break, wasn't it, from Formula One? I'm not quite sure what happened when they did the calendar with these last few races. It seems like somebody in the office clearly had a day off. But anyway, enough about that. Hope you're well. Hope you enjoyed the break. I spent the break pretty much decorating to get my jobs list done so that my wife would release my passport so Dad and I could go to Vegas. That's all done. We're counting down. 6 races to go. Vegas on the list. I cannot wait. And there is so much to talk about and so much to look forward to as Formula One races back on track this weekend, starting, of course, with Austin and the USA Grand Prix, which is, of course, a sprint weekend. So let's get right into the latest news and, of course, that all-important preview to what's going to happen in Austin this weekend. Let's go. Okay, first bit of news we've got to cover is, of course, Daniel Ricciardo. Now, I haven't done any podcasts or a lot of videos since that decision was made after the Singapore Grand Prix to part ways with Daniel Ricciardo and replace him, of course, with Liam Lawson for the remainder of this season. It's very much, it seems like Red Bull don't quite know what their best driver lineup is. They seem to have some issues with it. They've got Max obviously locked into a long-term deal, despite obviously rumours about Aston Martin and Mercedes, etc. But as it stands, he's obviously locked in until 2028. They've got Sergio Perez, who signed a new contract this year. His performance has been pretty shocking, to be honest. And they're not sure what to do with him next year, with, of course, performance clauses, giving them a get-out at the end of this season, if we're led to believe everything we're hearing. So in terms of Checo, he brings a vast amount of money, which we've talked about on this podcast many times. However, in terms of the Constructors' Championship, he's putting that at risk, and maybe they might just lose that to McLaren, which we'll come on to in obviously the rest of the show later on, because they are in real danger if Sergio don't get the ball rolling and such in terms of his performances and his form. Which, of course, leads him to Yuki Tsunoda, performed well, clearly tied in with the Honda deal with regards to how he is perceived at Red Bull. Helmut Marko tend to speak, a bit hit and miss for him, to be honest. Sometimes he speaks quite highly, sometimes he doesn't speak highly. Christian Horner clearly does not want Yuki Tsunoda in a Red Bull. We know that there's a Honda tie-up in terms of the partnership and obviously only getting a one-year deal, which will take him through to the end of the Honda partnership. We've always talked about that. However, Yuki has been performing in that Visa Cash App RB this season. And, when we look at tyre tests, opportunities, they tend to overlook Yuki for, getting a benchmark to what he can do in a Red Bull. So it's safe to say, whilst Christian is in charge, I don't think we're going to see Yuki Tsunoda in that Red Bull main car, unfortunately, if you're a Yuki Tsunoda fan. Then, of course, that leaves Daniel Ricciardo, who was, of course, brought back to be the person to put that pressure on Checo and that fairy tale, sort of end to his career and move up if Checo isn't performing. Daniel then didn't perform by his own admission and obviously by the results. Yes, there was a lot of dodgy strategy calls in there. Yes, it feels a bit harsh to have changed him now with regards to the rest of the season coming up. However, he's probably the first to admit that he didn't perform at a level he could, he wanted to, and certainly not at a level which would consider him for that main Red Bull seat. So lo and behold, in comes Liam Lawson. We're being told it's to the end of this season. Pretty safe to say Liam will be in one of the two teams for next season, whether that be Red Bull or, of course, Visa Cash App RB. It's pretty much a shootout is the way it's been described. He's got 6 races left. He's got a grid penalty coming to him in Austin, which is going to put him on the back foot. He's been doing some Pirelli tyre testing in the RB20. They clearly had that option where they had to give him a contract, otherwise he would have been free to leave, which is something they didn't want to do. Their Red Bull junior pool is quite sparse in terms of up-and-coming talent, so they obviously didn't want to lose that. And they pulled the plug on it and brought him in. A lot of talk around this is a contractual thing, that he had to do 5 or 6 races this season. I'm not too sure I believe that. I think this is straightforward a shootout, because Daniel would have known that, the team would have known that, and they would have handled that changeover a lot better than what they actually did, which we're going to come on to now. Because whilst I totally understand the reasons behind making that swap of drivers, given the current performance of your pool of drivers, when you've got these options at your disposal, what I don't like is the way it was done, the way it was communicated. So I think as a fan, you've got to look at this in two very, very different things. Were Visa Cash App RB and Red Bull right to look at replacing Daniel Ricciardo? Yes, they were, based on his performance and what they brought him into. Did they handle it right? Absolutely not. They handled it like a hot mess, let's be honest about it. It was absolutely shocking. What they did was they pretty much dropped the ball on everything. Now, if you're going to make a change, make a change. Red Bull have been very critical in the past. They've been very much let's make the change, let's do this. And if it gives us negative PR, it doesn't really matter. They've been open and honest about that. They've done that. And with Daniel, they just had this wishy-washy answer all the time. We got to Singapore. We got the room that it was going to be his last Grand Prix. Daniel faced the media, looked really uncomfortable, looked like he knew, if I'm honest, but didn't know what to say or if he could say. The team then suddenly turned around and said, well, we're going to meet after Singapore, make a decision. Daniel looked like that decision had been made, and the way it was, the farewell, you had the Guard of Honor from the Visa Cash App team, you had, Formula One themselves, you had Sky, all these people making these montages of goodbye to Daniel. So it was fairly safe to say that their decision had been made. They were just choosing not to communicate it. Now, I've also heard, I think it was David Coulthard on his podcast, talking about how Daniel knew it and didn't want a big song and dance about it. Now, that's understandable, and if that's right, then that's perfectly fine, I suppose, and probably explains some of the handling. However, you would have thought they would have wanted to confirm it at least, if nothing else. Then, of course, we get the news that Liam Lawson knew a couple of weeks beforehand, around the Baku time, so he knew he was coming in. So then it kind of makes you think, well, everything they said to the press wasn't true, because they clearly made their decision to communicate that to Liam. They then told everyone that they were going to make a decision after Singapore, but you've already made that decision. And it just makes them look a bit unprofessional in that sense. And I think for a team who are normally quite good at handling PR and marketing, I just feel that on this announcement, they pretty much dropped the ball on it. And hopefully there's some lessons learned and they can move on from it. Like I say, in terms of the replacement and replacing Daniel, I totally get it. I totally get why they've done it. I can see the reasons behind it. They want to give Liam some time, embed him in. They want to see what he can do. They also want to give him some time with regards to actual race time again. They also want to get him used to the pit crew again, the mechanics, working with the team. Very different being a reserve driver on the sidelines and doing a few Pirelli tyre tests, a few old car tests, a few simulator runs, to actually getting yourself back up to speed in a race car. So I totally understand that. But like I say, in terms of Daniel Ricciardo and Red Bull, sad to see him go in terms of character. He's a character who's going to be, completely missed on the grid. I'm sure that whatever he does, he's going to be successful. Will that be racing, into media, some other things? In terms of personality, a big loss for the Formula One paddock. But like I said, I totally understand why Red Bull have done it with Liam Lawson. I just wish they'd handled it better. Then we come on to Haas and Toyota tie-up. Now, this was on my TikTok page a while back in July, that this was going to happen. So this is a technical partnership between Haas and Toyota. Now, this isn't a takeover. This isn't an engine deal at all. So Haas have got that deal with Ferrari signed until I think it's 2028. So a long-term deal with Ferrari. It's been re-signed, and that's not under any threat. Toyota have confirmed that they're under no impression to build an engine. It's not on their agenda. It's not something they're trying to do. They are purely there to support Haas. Now, this is being described by Haas as a technical partnership where they bring expertise and experience as well as sharing some facilities. Haas in exchange give them a Formula One platform and, of course, that all-important commercial backing in terms of space on the car, in terms of media, exposure, that sort of thing. So what this is Toyota returning to Formula One without the outlay of a factory team, and with the added advantage of being able to pull out whenever they want to without it being involved around selling the team. What does it bring to Haas? Well, it allows them to kind of try and start diverting away from this Ferrari reliance. Now, they're going to get their parts as normal. That part isn't going to change. However, they are going to eventually start getting parts from Toyota. Now, Ferrari have been alongside this deal all along. They've been involved in it. They've set out to Toyota what they wanted in terms of the contractual obligations between protecting their IP, which Toyota and Haas have obviously been fine with, and everyone's been fine with that. And what's going to happen is eventually we see Toyota taking over some of the production of the parts from, I think it's Ferrari, and there's another company, I think it's Dallara, I'm not too sure on that one, who actually make the parts for Haas. Now, the idea is they're going to build this sort of campus. Haas are going to invest in it. That's why Gene Haas pulled out of NASCAR. And, of course, they're going to grow and then eventually bring it all more into house. So that will give them, it will give them added value, because ultimately that's what Gene Haas is looking for. For those who are sort of wondering what Gene Haas's motivation is to all of this, when he wants to improve the team, he's seen that the improvement that Io Komatsu has made this season and the strides they made has been really beneficial. prize money. They're set to get a lot more prize money from their championship position. They're closing in on Visa Cash App RB. With the updates that are coming to Austin, there's a chance they might overtake them, especially if Visa Cash App RB continue this downward trend that they've been doing recently. So that actually puts them in a really good position. I think they're going to miss Nico Hulkenberg, but Esteban Ocon coming in is a good solid point scorer. They've obviously got Oliver Behrman, and with the Ferrari ties, that obviously fits in with all those. So the future is looking good for them. Kevin Magnussen is obviously exiting Formula One. Again, has been really good in terms of bringing the performance back. I know he's had his ban. I know he's had his incidents. There'll be people saying, but actually the Hulkenberg-Magnussen partnership has been really successful for Haas. And it's going to be interesting to see how they recreate it. But the whole point of this Gene Haas investment is that he wants to build the value of the Formula One team. He's seeing how much lots of Alpine are being valued at. He's seeing how much you can sell a Formula One team. Now, he's not intent on something now. He's actually done a tour of Mercedes factories. He's done a tour of motorhomes to invest in. What they're trying to do is build up the value of Haas Formula One team so that if he were to sell it, he would get the maximum available for it. At the moment, he can't do that. Their factories are lagging behind in terms of facilities. They'll be the first to tell you with their headcount, with Banbury, offices in Maranello, offices in the United States as well. They're spread all over the place. They want to centralise a lot more. They want to bring it in a lot more, put it more under one house, get Toyota on board, who have been successful in their own right in terms of their motorsports, bring them on board. And actually what they're going to then do is increase the value by producing their own parts alongside Toyota, having their own campus, having better facilities, better assets for the team, so that if and when Gene Haas decides to sell, it's getting value for money for it. So that is ultimately what it is. Gene Haas has realised that you've got to speculate to accumulate in Formula One, and that's what he's doing. In terms of Haas, partnership's great for them. They're getting Toyota back on board. They're getting some great backing. They've got a Ferrari engine secure. They look like they're heading in the right direction. It looks like they've got to understand the car a lot more. Komatsu's approach is obviously very different to Gunter Steiner's. Gunter is very much focused on money and securing the team to the sponsorship. Komatsu is very much that engineering background and improving the performance. And Haas have quite clearly got a balance with the right people bringing in that business as well, as we've seen with, I think it was Orion, so another sponsorship deal as well on the back of the Toyota one. So clearly Gene Haas has found a balance, which you kind of feel a bit sorry for Gunter, who was, playing with one hand behind his back in terms of finances, whereas Komatsu seems to have been given a bit more leeway on that. But then likewise, Komatsu's proved himself in terms of how Haas are performing, and they are definitely a team on the up. So if you're a Haas fan, especially you, Henry, exciting times, that's for sure, because it is a good time to be a Haas fan. They are definitely on the move up. They're definitely staying in Formula One. And all of this is going to do is further cement their relationship in the sport and take them to the next step, which can only be good for everyone involved. Then we're going to talk about Andretti. So let's talk about Michael Andretti stepping down as the face of Andretti. Lots to talk around this one and the reasons why. If we link it to Formula One have obviously said no to Andretti. We know the FIA said yes, but we know that Formula One said no. We know that there's been talk of, that Congress investigation into it. We've not heard anything about that at the moment. But in terms of Andretti and Formula One, there is clearly a blockage between the two. They don't like Michael Andretti for every reason. I'm not too sure the dynamics behind it or the reasons behind it. But Formula One, as in Formula One media and Formula One management, don't like Andretti and are certainly not, convinced that they will add the value they needed to come to Formula One. Now, there's been a lot of talk about GM Motors. So GM Motors had the option to come in with Andretti. That option's been extended to 2028 after Formula One said no. So that option is still on the table for GM Motors and Andretti to make a bid for 2028, alongside obviously GM Motors providing their own engine. There is a talk that they want GM Motors to come in on their own without Andretti, which is an option that GM Motors have denied at the moment. Well, not this way may happen still. I think that this might be a shift towards that. So I think what we're going to see the Andretti GM partnership move from strength to strength. We know they got a car in a wind tunnel. We know it's coming towards the end of the year in terms of being fully available and ready. And I feel what's going to happen with this is we might see an Andretti name dropped further down the pecking order in exchange for a GM Motors name or the Cadillac name to go higher up to appease the people involved and get this deal through. That's my personal view on this. If, of course, they don't buy a team, I still think there are better options to buy a team. Alpine, of course, have stopped producing Renault engines since last time we made the podcast. That leaves Alpine open to a takeover. I don't care what we're hearing. I don't care what people are saying. I don't care what Flavio Briatore is saying to the press. To discontinue your engine supply is a classic move to add value to your team, like we've just heard from Gene Haas, in order to sell. So the deal with Alpine is very different. So Alpine have stopped their engine supply. They're looking to get that Mercedes engine supply on board. That will add value because they will sell it as a whole. So they would say, here's our Enstone factory, which builds our cars with all of our parts. Oh, and by the way, we've got a Mercedes-Benz power supply until 2028, which will no doubt add value to that team when they go to sell it. So don't believe what you're hearing in the press in terms of Flavio Briatore. He's been brought in with one job and one job only: secure that Mercedes engine supply, get the best value for money in terms of sale for Alpine. There's no other reason for that negative PR about bringing Flavio Briatore back that I can see. High tech, of course, in the running for them. And of course, we've got the Far East investors who look to coming into Formula One in the first place, who may also be sniffing around Alpine. So I don't think a straightforward takeover from Andretti is the only option for them. And I think they just keep going. So at the moment, the business is fine. At the moment, they're still making money. So they are under no pressure to sell, even though they're being lined up to sell. Then, of course, after we've done Andretti and GM Motors, we're going to come on to Sauber. Now, Sauber have the only seat remaining in Formula One. I've heard a lot of talk about Franco Colapinto going. I've heard a lot of talk about Mick Schumacher going. We've heard about, obviously, Valtteri Bottas in there, amongst others as well. I'm led to believe it's going to be Valtteri Bottas. May not be a popular choice, but that's what we're hearing currently. Mick Schumacher's also in the frame due to his ties with Binotto. Binotto feels that he was quite harshly judged in terms of when he was at Haas, and obviously what happened there. We know he had a crap car. We know that actually when he was at Haas, he didn't get the opportunity to show what he can do. So Binotto is a big fan of Mick Schumacher, obviously from his Ferrari days, and having Mick as a Ferrari young driver. So there is a chance there that Mick might come in. I do think they're going to go with Valtteri. We've seen a lot more of the social media uptake in terms of the Valtteri content. Normally a sign that this is going to happen. The other thing I don't think that we've got to sort of think about in terms of imminent decision, they don't need to make one. So I think that Sauber are quite happy to sit on this, see how everything plays out, see if someone gets this place who might overtake that. I mean, what if, for example, Checo becomes available, if Red Bull get rid of him with all of that millions of pounds worth of sponsorship? That then becomes an appealing option for him, doesn't it? And Checo ain't going to drive. So maybe there's a bigger play at stake here with Sauber stroke Audi, who are waiting in the wings just to see what happens with some of these drivers. Franco Colapinto has obviously done a great job since coming in for Logan Sargent. I feel a bit sorry for Logan Sargent because whilst Franco is undoubtedly a great driver and he's undoubtedly done an amazing job coming in, he's also came in at a time when that car has dramatically improved. There's a raft of updates on that car that came for the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort, and Franco has, been helped by that as well. Now, that's not taking anything away from Franco's performance, far from it. He's come in, done a job, got close to Alex, which is what they wanted. Certainly not closer than what Logan was doing at times. But I kind of feel a bit for Logan Sargent in that sense, because you kind of deep down, can't help but feel what could he have done with that same car and those updates, which he didn't get the chance to drive, unfortunately. But that's the way it is, unfortunately. But we know that Franco is most likely to return to a reserve role for Williams, whilst obviously Carlos Sainz comes on board. We know that's going to talk about a lot of simulator work, a lot of, tyre testing, a lot of historic car runs, that sort of thing. So that's what we can expect from Franco from next season once Carlos Sainz joins. Obviously, what it does for Williams, it gives them a ready-made option for, and if you've got Alex Albon taking over, or if, of course, you've got Carlos Sainz wants to go on to better things, there's various options for them to go and do that, which is brilliant for the team and for James Vowles to have secured Franco for that reason as well. There was talk that he wanted to try and loan him out to Sauber, but it seems like that just wasn't an option. It seems like that's just a bit of a non-starter, to be honest, for it, which is a shame because, like I say, I think he's enough to deserve a place on a grid next year. But then, likewise, as I said, I would like to have seen what Logan could have done in that car because, let's be honest about it, it would have been nice to have seen. Then we come on to, of course, COTA and this weekend. Sipping a coffee. Right, so COTA this weekend is a return, of course, of a sprint format. Now, for those of you who may have forgotten, sprint means that we've got one FP1 practice session on Friday. We've then got the sprint qualifying and the start of Part Ferme. Then on Saturday, we have the sprint race and the end of Part Ferme. Teams can then make changes based on the data they've gathered from not only FP1, but also from the sprint qualifying and the sprint race. They can then make changes to their car before qualifying, and then, of course, they qualify for the Grand Prix, which is, of course, as normal on Sunday. What can we expect from COTA? Well, we can expect quite a bit, actually. upgrades galore. We are going to see every team bring upgrades. This is the last chance for a team really to bring an upgrade. They've been working for the past 4 weeks. This 4-week break that we've had in the calendar hasn't been a break for the teams. They've been working flat out. There was no summer break. There was no factory shutdown. So they've been working flat out with this in mind. We know we've got 2 lots of triple headers. So that's going to bring a lot of strain on development. So the teams are bringing them here. But what we've got this weekend is a real mixed match of teams and development. So this is what we've got. We've got teams who are still going for places in the championship. We've got teams fighting for the championship. We've also got a situation where we've got teams looking with our next season, because next season is going to be development of this season. Now, most of the 2025 cars, believe it or not, are getting near the end of their development. Now, that might sound crazy, but they need to keep that development in 2025 free for the new regulation cars, which they can't start in terms of CFD and wind tunnel until January 2025. So the teams are bringing everything forward. So what we're getting some teams, Williams have already said this, where they're trialing parts for next season now. We're also going to have some teams hiding stuff for next season. Mercedes brings to mind. Obviously, Lewis going to Ferrari. They're not going to want to show their hand too much. They are in no man's land in terms of the championship. Where they finish now is kind of irrespective of their financial package. Irrespective of what they're going to do. They can't win the championship. That's a complete write-off. They don't want to show their hand too early. They don't want to show Lewis their hand too early because he's going to take all that knowledge to Ferrari. So they're in a bit of limbo, no doubt about it. And then, of course, we've got the teams who are just continually trying to improve and do that sort of thing. So we are going to have this mixed match. Most of the teams have got an update for Austin this week. Red Bull have got a new floor. I imagine we're going to see a flexi front wing. We haven't seen one yet from Red Bull. Ferrari brought one to Singapore after the FIA said yes to it. And we can pretty much expect that from Red Bull. But they think they solved that floor problem. They've been trialing some things in the past few races. And yeah, they're calling it the magic floor because they are hoping and praying that this is what is the missing part of that car performance. We know that McLaren have got updates. Now, they're being a bit coy on whether they're bringing them or not, but they're saying they're going to trust the process that they've done already. They have a new floor. They've had it for a while. They've kept it back because they haven't needed it, and they are due to bring that as well. We know Ferrari have got even more updates despite bringing the loads beforehand, so that we know that Ferrari have got an update package. Mercedes have confirmed they've got an update package as well. We know that Haas have confirmed they've got an update package as well. So you can see where I'm going with this. Most teams will have some sort of update on the car. Now, as we know from the likes of Aston Martin and Visa Cash App RB and Mercedes with terms of updates, that doesn't mean they're always going to work because we've also seen the teams actually take them off or go backwards. So this is a real gamble. And this is exactly what McLaren are saying is their concern, that they're going to introduce this update, but they're not 100% sure it's going to be beneficial. We've seen it with Red Bull. We've seen it with Mercedes, especially. Spa springs to mind when they took the updates off and went back to the old setup. And eventually they've actually scrapped that over the course of the past couple of races and gone back to a pre-Spa floor because their Spa update didn't work, ready to repackage it and bring it back for this weekend in Austin. So teams are clearly concerned about what these updates are bringing to the table in terms of the actual car itself. So that might swing the pecking order around a bit. Now, we know that there's a bit of a difference in terms of part firming this year. So we know that last year, obviously, Charles and Lewis fell foul of the plank wear, mainly due to the fact they couldn't change the setup after the sprint race. So because of part firming rules, so they then got disqualified from the main race. You can, of course, change that this year. So you won't have that problem. Now, that does, of course, allow teams to take updates off. So it allows simulator work to be done and it allows them to try things. So there's not a lot of time with free practice one, admittedly, but there is the whole of the sprint race in terms of gathering data, and that's competitive data as well. Now, in terms of what we've got this weekend, we've got the tyres and we've also got the tyre wear and we've also got some track changes to consider as well. Now, COTA is normally more than a one-stop. It's normally a multiple-stop race. And in terms of the tyres, we know that, they might not wear the same way because of the resurfacing of the track. Now, COTA has had some massive work done. It's had a resurfacing virtually the whole track. So we don't know how the tyre and the tyre deck is going to react to that. And they've also made changes to the track layouts as well as introducing cameras. We know last year there was a few problems with track limits and the FIA couldn't say that the cars were definitely off the track because the cameras weren't set at the right angle. So there's been a lot of work done for that to make it very much like Austria in terms of the track limit, so that the camera's in the right place, they're recording the car, they're ready to go, and hopefully we won't have track limit problems. And we've also seen some changes to some of the corners as well in terms of runoff areas, gravel, and that sort of thing. So don't be surprised if in FP1 we see a few cars going off a bit, going wide a bit, whilst they test when the new track surface, as well as, of course, these slight changes to the track in itself, and, of course, the grip. COTA does have a lot of support races, so hopefully the grip won't be too bad, even with a new surface. That will come up online, and that will get back to it. But yeah, in terms of what we can expect, we might get a shuffle in it. I still think the usual suspects are going to be up there. So I think you're going to have your Lando. I think Max might be a good bet for this weekend in terms of coming back into the fray. Mercedes might be a dark horse, but talk about dark horses. Ferrari looked very competitive in Singapore and also looked like the updates they made might just put them into play. So I do think those top four, it's anybody's sort of guess in terms of performances. Checo will want a big performance because where he is, so watch out for that one. And of course, we're back into this literally triple header of races itself. Now, in terms of the actual track, let's see what we got for the United States Grand Prix. When COTA was designed, its aim was to use its plot in the rolling hills outside Austin to create a circuit made up of limitations of some of the best corners used at the best circuits in the world, and this is precisely what it achieved. Drivers on the starting grid looking up to the left-hand hairpin will think of the steep climb to the first corner of the Red Bull Ring. It's a wide entry, affording plenty of possible lines. However, the exit from the highest point of the lap, which is 130 feet, higher than its lowest point, with hard acceleration down and through turn 2. Still accelerating, the drivers then enter COTA's equivalent of Silverstone's Beckett's S's. Turn 7 is tighter and 8 and 9 tighter still. But then the drivers can run flat out through a left kink towards the furthest point of the circuit, the turn 11 hairpin. The straighter out of here is the longest of the lap, and even though the cars start it in second gear, the fastest cars will hit 193 miles an hour or 310 kilometers per hour at the lap's fastest point before braking heavily to take the tight left at its conclusion. There is a notable change of flow from here. A trio of twisters take the cars to turn 15, out of which the corners become more open as the track runs around the foot of that giant observation tower, rising on approach and falling away on the exit. This just leaves a fourth gear corner before the tight second gear final corner, out of which strong acceleration is vital for that run up, of course, that lofty turn 1. So in terms of what we got 2023 pole time with Charles Leclerc with 1 minute 34.723. The winner's average speed in 2023 was 120.579 miles per hour. 2023 fastest lap was actually Yuki Tsunoda with 1 minute 38.139, and the lap record is Charles Leclerc set in 2019 with a 1 minute 36.169. So, with all of that in mind, that is your guide to what is coming up in COTA this weekend. Like I said, keep your eye on the TV schedules because there is a change with being a sprint weekend. All to play for. McLaren leading the Constructors' Championship, Max leading the Drivers' Championship. Both are not in the bag. These updates could shake everything up. Max, hasn't got that Drivers' Championship secure yet. And despite McLaren taking the lead in the Constructors' Championship, I'm not convinced that they've got enough yet to put away from Red Bull, especially if Max comes back into play and especially if Checo ups his game. So, yeah, definitely. With it, of course, the added option of Ferrari and Mercedes taking points off everyone else around them, which could also play a massive factor into the championship as well. So, with all of that on there, I've taken too much of your time. This is about 30 minutes of Coffee Corner Motorsport, 4 Beans a podcast. Just one thing from me, if you haven't already, please do me the favour of liking, subscribing, whatever option is available to you on the platform that you're listening to this podcast on. And all what's left to say is, bring it on. It's been a long break, but we are finally back, baby. Formula One is back. So cheers for that. See you on the next show.